Hello everyone, and welcome to a special holiday installment that'll be going over some of the weirder aspects of Need for Speed's history. 20 years ago, in 2004, the 8th installment of the Need for Speed series, Underground 2, was released not only on all major platforms of the time, but also had a separate version for mobile phones, using the Qualcomm BREW platform, fully known as the Binary Runtime Environment for wireless. This version of the game was developed by the IdeaWorks 3D studio, which at the time created many quality-made mobile games. This particular port was released in July 2005, 8 months after the main game released. One of the main goals for this version of the game was to provide downloadable game content via the internet, ranging from tracks to car customization, with player-customized cars being able to be downloaded from the server. This feature was innovative for that era and for mobile devices. In concept, the mobile edition almost copied the full game. Street racing, earning money, unlocking new races, and upgrading your cars. However, it also included character voiceovers that could be delivered via SMS, and carried on graphics that were great for its time, especially given the fact that you could play this on a Motorola flip phone. Nowadays, several test versions of the game, including those compiled for Windows, have made it available to the public. However, these versions are incomplete feature-wise. Car customization is unavailable since it was based around the game's server. Crashes occur in various parts of the game, and only a very few amount of cars are accessible if the files are even installed correctly in the first place. Nevertheless, even in this state, it allows us to experience a long-lost edition of Underground 2, especially since the servers are no longer operational. A quick thank you to those who made this video possible. Thank you to Lex, Kraze, and their extensive research into this port, as well as the user R033, who created a patch that improves original image quality, draw distance, and frame rate. By the way, here's how the game originally looked like in its original state. If you look closely during driving, particularly attentive players of the classic Need for Speed titles might be able to recognize the traffic cars. You may have seen them before, you might think. Well, that's because you have, particularly in the PlayStation versions of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and even Need for Speed High Stakes. When you press the button to look back at any other car that passes by, the camera's movements are almost exactly like those in High Stakes. Similarities also exist in the game's file format usage. From the limited information that is available to us, we know that the team at IdeaWorks 3D based their mobile port on one of the classic Need for Speed titles released on the original PlayStation, particularly Need for Speed High Stakes. Obviously, parts of the game were heavily changed and refined to suit the limitations and capabilities of the mobile BREW or BREW platform. However, some elements of the classic Need for Speed games were kept almost entirely intact, particularly track locations. You may be asking yourself, why would they do this? Well, it seems like the most likely answer was that the developers want to save a little bit of time by reusing existing track designs, leading to exotic locations being somewhat modified and expanded upon. Nevertheless, players familiar with NFS 3 and 4 will easily recognize familiar places and routes. Even the world map in the menu reveals routes from Hot Pursuit locations, such as Empire City. Additionally, some details like road signs show varied interactions. Some cannot be knocked down at all, and will cause you to crash instead, while others allow you to pass through without any issues. One of the most notable features of this version is the black and red barriers, which look almost identical to those in the full version of Underground 2, though their placement can be quite unusual. Instead of blocking other roads, they may be placed on turns, or even in double layers. Some textures on the tracks were also completely changed, and new elements such as columns, signs, and off-track buildings were also added. The first of these tracks from NFS 3 is, of course, Hometown. A bunch of power lines were added, some roadsides get animations, and the crop duster is now frozen in the air for whatever reason. More banners promoting the circuit from the first Need for Speed also appeared. For Red Rock Ridge, a casino was built near the observatory, whilst the desert view of Red Rock Ridge remains mostly unchanged. A new shop was added, along with a part of the unfinished bridge. Atlantica was reimagined to represent a more urban environment, albeit loosely. Colorful lights now hang over the roads of Rocky Pass. One suburban jump has been completely removed, and the tunnel has texture issues. Additionally, one of the ground sections near the road are missing entirely. Unlike the original track, this version of Country Woods features a different season. And the giant donut above the diner building now has a blinking light. A new waterfall has appeared in the middle of the Lost Canyons desert, no doubt a much appreciated feature by locals, and makes it a very interesting feature for the game itself. The route inside the cave also begins to look completely different than its original counterpart. The iconic underwater tunnel of Aquatica was replaced with a rather ordinary street. How very disappointing, honestly. And the Titanic-like ship Easter egg was instead swapped out for two stationary ships that have been borrowed directly from the Empire City track. The location of Summit was left almost unchanged, allowing to see the world of Underground in winter, even recreating an infamous tree bug on the trees. Store signs were added in some places. An alternative route in Empire City still remains inaccessible, and new roads have been added on some places. One of the road signs on a crossroad now just says anywhere in all directions. Also, shortcuts on the track start have now been completely closed off. Also worth noting are the giant columns around one of the turns, which were now replaced with the Bayview rail station. Now looking at some of the tracks borrowed from High Stakes, we begin with Kindiak Park. The river at Kindiak Park seems to have completely disappeared. Leave a comment below where you think it might have up and left to. The textures are a bit unclear here, and a circus has appeared instead. Logs bearing the track's name were swapped out for concrete rings, and the train no longer arrives at its station. One of the bridges on Durham Road is illuminated, and the tunnel lighting was changed. And more off-track buildings were added. The casino and corner store from the Red Rock Ridge track were added near the start of Dolphin Cove. The large waterfall just disappeared, but a smaller one appeared on another place. Also, somebody now lives at the Forest House now. Very cool. I'd love to move there myself as well. The Snowy Ridge track remains largely unchanged, but some textures like wooden houses at the start of the track are now blue. As for Raceway 1, there really isn't a whole lot to say. The NFS inscription on the asphalt was instead replaced with the developer's team name. On Raceway 2, snow has been reduced in certain areas, with no other changes. Lighting was added in various spots of Raceway 3, and the Need for Speed sign was replaced with red directional signs. Finally, the Eagle Ridge Freeway and Train Yard tracks were created specifically for this version of Underground 2. This same train yard, in fact, was used as a test location at the early stage of the port's development, and also this screenshot with the Chevrolet Camaro from High Stakes and a short video with the graphics tests were also found in the files. Here's another question that you're probably asking yourself right now. Since we know that this port is based on the classic NFS titles from the PlayStation, is it possible to take the tracks from here and transfer them into the fourth installment of the series? Let's start with the fact that the final version of this port has significant differences in terms of track and car formats, making it essentially incompatible with the older game. Fortunately, among the available files, there are earlier versions of the tracks, including various testing and incomplete versions. Approximately until March of 2005, the track format was close to being compatible with High Stakes, so such files can be taken and indeed launched in the PlayStation version of the mentioned game.
3, 2, 1, go!
As you can see, the lighting on the tracks looks completely different from the third NFS. specifically because vertex lighting is entirely absent here. Additionally, some textures are misaligned, and texture bugs, and not only texture-related issues, are present directly in the track model source files. Why this happened, I cannot say for sure, but judging by the configuration files found in the track folders, the official track conversion program works simultaneously with the formats of both Hot Pursuit and High Stakes, but only one of those for the PlayStation versions. Another feature of the found test files is a variety of bugs, which are only present on tracks from the third Need for Speed game. Some tracks, such as Hometown and Red Rock Ridge, lack parts of their geometry in different places, and beyond texture problems, there are instances where the game just outright crashes. To launch these particular test files, it was necessary to replace one of the tracks in the game, specifically the night version, because textures break in the daytime version. In some cases, traffic cars and opponents will work, while in others, attempting to enable them causes the game to freeze. However, a pleasant surprise among the found files was that the Kindiak Park track in a compatible format with the third NFS. However, it lacked a suitable set of textures, and if you take textures from High Stakes, their order and placement do not match. Traffic cars and opponents work here, however you can also drive through the track's decorations. One of the test builds of the mobile port is dated November 12, 2004. While it is currently impossible to launch the build itself, as you can see here, it is possible, however, to take the track and the car from it and put it in High Stakes. This here is Empire City from Hot Pursuit and the Nissan 350Z in two variants. The height of this car model is likely defined directly in the model itself. And okay, I think we all gotta admit it, this is quite unusual to see the 350Z in such a location. Think about it, this is the cover of a titular underground environment, types of tuner cars and all this sort of shenanigans, and here it is in a rough and tumble New York-esque environment, and not so bright and not so glossy, and a distinct lack of exotic cars around here. I don't know. You can see for yourselves the distinctions, shall we say. In the description of this video, you will see a link to another vid, where I show all the tracks from Hot Pursuits taken from various builds of the mobile port. Please do keep in mind that not all of them can be launched in the PlayStation version of High Stakes. And I remind you that these are just test files, and they do not reflect the final idea of the developers. That's all for now. You can download and explore the different builds of this port by yourself, from the Internet Archive website. Happy New Year, happy holidays, and see you all next time.